During Christmas dinner, my grandpa asked me, "Kevin, what do you think of your new house?" I froze. What new house? I was living in a dump of an apartment, working night shifts just to survive. That's when I discovered the truth. For 5 years, my father had been intercepting thousands of dollars Grandpa sent for my education. That family betrayal was just the beginning of a scheme that would destroy everything. My name is Kevin Harris, I'm 23, and I work the night shift at Kroger here in Nashville, Tennessee. You know how it goes. You wake up every day at 5 in the afternoon, drink coffee that tastes more like dirty water, and haul boxes until the sun comes up. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills on my one-bedroom apartment on the east side of town near Shelby Avenue. My life? Well, it's a complicated story involving years of unfair treatment. Ever since my mom died when I was 12, things at home were never the same. My dad, Orson, always looked like he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he never showed much interest in my feelings or needs. After he married Marjorie, 3 years after Mom passed, the house changed. As if I were an old piece of furniture nobody knew where to place. Marjorie wasn't bad, you know? She just tolerated me. That polite but distant kind of greeting? That's how she treated me, like a stranger who dropped by for dinner now and then. And my half-brother Tyler, 5 years younger, well, he was always the prince of the house. It's funny how little things say everything about a family, right? When Tyler needed new Nike sneakers for his basketball team, my dad would pull out his wallet without hesitation. But when I needed a new uniform for my Kroger job, I'd get this line. "Let's see if anything's left at the end of the month." Tyler got $50 a week just for doing nothing. I got a list of extra chores if I wanted some cash. Have you ever felt invisible in your own home? It's a feeling that eats away at you slowly like rust. The funny thing is, I never complained or made a scene. Mom always said a real man handles things with dignity and self-respect. So I swallowed it, worked hard at Hillsborough High School, and kept going. When Tyler started talking about college, Vanderbilt, Middle Tennessee State, even out-of-state options, we all gathered in the living room to discuss scholarships, majors, and his future. When I said I wanted to study civil engineering, Dad sighed and said, "Kevin, you need to be more realistic about your financial chances." In that moment, something inside me broke. Not with explosive anger, but with a deep sadness I couldn't name. That's how I ended up working the graveyard shift and living alone in an apartment that smells like old food from the downstairs neighbor. It wasn't a dramatic decision, you know. It just got to the point where staying home hurt more than facing loneliness. The place is small, 1 room and a half, a kitchen the size of a closet, but it's my territory. No one looks at me like I'm a problem to fix or a mistake from the past. And there's one thing that kept me going through those hard years. Grandpa William's Sunday night calls from Chicago. He'd always call Sunday evening, ask how I was doing, if I needed anything, if everything was okay at home. Those conversations were like a beacon in the dark. But there was something in those calls I never quite understood. The turning point in my life came in a way I never expected. It was Christmas Eve, and I was walking home from work when I got a text from my dad. "Grandpa is coming to Christmas dinner. You need to be here by 7. It wasn't an invitation. It was an order. I hadn't set foot in that house in nearly 2 years, and now they wanted me to show up as if nothing had happened. I could have ignored it, but something about Grandpa being involved made me think twice. He had never visited Nashville before, always said his legs couldn't handle long trips anymore. When I arrived at their new house, a grand build in Green Hills miles away from the modest home I grew up in, I was stunned. 2 stories, a flawless lawn, 3 cars in the garage. My dad had scored a promotion at work, sure, but this was way beyond what a sales manager could reasonably afford. Marjorie greeted me at the door with that forced smile you use when you're trying to be polite, but would rather be anywhere else. "Kevin, I'm so glad you came. Your grandpa is really looking forward to seeing you." There was something off in her tone, as if she was hiding nerves. The dinner started normally, or as normal as it could be, given that I felt like a stranger at the table. Tyler talked about his college plans. Dad nodded along, and Marjorie kept serving more food than any normal family could eat. Grandpa was quieter than usual, observing more than speaking. Then out of nowhere, he turned to me and asked, "So, Kevin, what do you think of your new house?" I replied that it was beautiful and that they had done a great job. That's when he dropped the line that changed everything. "No, son. I'm asking what you think of your new house." The silence that followed was deafening. I blinked multiple times, trying to process what he'd just said. "My house?" Marjorie dropped her fork on her plate, and my dad went bright red. "Dad, I think you're confused," my dad said, forcing a laugh. "This is our house. Kevin lives in an apartment downtown." Grandpa frowned, scanned the room, and then fixed his gaze on me. "Apartment? What apartment? I've been sending you money to buy a decent house, Kevin. Money for your education, for your needs." The atmosphere at the table turned icy, like a bomb about to go off. In that moment, I felt the floor vanish beneath me. Grandpa spoke more firmly. "For 5 years, I've been sending $500 a month to help Kevin. For college, so he could have a dignified life." He looked directly at my dad. "Orson, where is that money?" My dad opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water, while Marjorie went as pale as a sheet of paper. I stood up slowly, everything finally making sense. The new house, the cars, their comfortable life while I could barely pay rent. The betrayal was right in front of me, disguised as a family dinner. I looked at all of them, swallowed hard, and said simply, "I understand." Then I walked out without looking back. Driving back to my apartment that night felt like autopilot. My hands gripped the wheel, but my mind was racing, reinterpreting the last 5 years in a new light. $500 a month. $30,000, that should have been mine. Enough money for college, for a decent place to live, for not having to work night shifts just to survive. When I got home, I sat on the edge of my bed and looked around. Peeling walls, that musty smell, a fridge that sounded like a truck engine. It could have been so different. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. Want to know why? Because blind rage doesn't solve problems. It just creates more. My mom used to say that when someone betrays you, your best revenge is success, not destruction. So instead of calling my dad and unloading everything I felt, I grabbed a pad of paper and started making a list. First, I needed to understand exactly what happened. Second, I had to find where that money went. Third, I needed to decide what to do with that information. The calm I felt writing those words surprised me. It was as though I finally had a clear goal. On Monday, I called into work and took the day off. I told them it was a family emergency, technically not a lie. I went to the bank where I'd had an account since I was 18 and asked to speak with the manager. I explained the situation and asked if it was possible to track transfers that should have been made to my account. The manager, a kind man named Mr. Peterson, looked at me with genuine concern. "Kevin, this is serious. If there's suspicion of misappropriated funds, we need documentation." He helped me print out 5 years of statements, and sure enough, there was no sign of a single transfer from Chicago. After the bank, I headed straight to a law office downtown. I couldn't afford a high-priced attorney, but I knew about a free legal consultation service for low-income residents. The lawyer, Ms. Rodriguez, listened to my story with growing concern. "Kevin, this isn't just a family issue. If your grandpa can prove he sent that money and it was diverted, we're talking about embezzlement." She gave me a checklist of documents to gather and walked me through my legal rights. For the first time in days, I felt like I had a path forward. That week felt like the longest of my life. I kept working as usual, but every free minute was spent gathering evidence and organizing information. I called Grandpa and explained I needed copies of the bank transfers. He was furious when he learned I'd never received his money, but agreed to send me 5 years of receipts. "Kevin, my boy," he said, voice cracking, "I had no idea. Your dad always told me you were doing fine, studying, happy." In that moment, I realized my dad had betrayed not just me, but my grandpa as well. What amazed me most during those days was the clarity I had. I wasn't confused or hurt anymore. I was focused. Every document I gathered, every conversation I had, every step I took was deliberate. I didn't want to destroy my family. I just wanted justice. I wanted the truth to come out, and for everyone to be held accountable. When I finally had all the evidence in a neat folder, I sat again on the edge of my bed and looked around that shabby apartment. Soon, a lot of things were going to change, and this time, I was in control. 3 days after organizing all the evidence, I got a phone call that completely changed my perspective on the situation. It was Ms. Rodriguez, the lawyer from the Legal Aid Center, and her voice sounded different, more serious, more urgent. "Kevin, I need you to come to my office today. I found something in those documents you gave me." When I asked what it was, she paused for a long moment. "I'd rather explain in person. This is bigger than we thought." I hung up with a pit in my stomach because, in my experience, when lawyers say something is bigger than we thought, it rarely means good news. At her office, Ms. Rodriguez spread documents across the desk. Bank statements, my grandpa's transfer receipts, and a few sheets I didn't recognize. "Kevin, your case intrigued me so much that I decided to dig deeper. I contacted the bank that handled your grandfather's transfers." She pointed at one of the sheets. "I discovered the money wasn't just being diverted. It was used as collateral for loans taken out in the name of the company your dad works for." My head started spinning. Loans? What loans? I knew my dad was a sales manager, but I never imagined he was involved in that level of financial transaction. "There's more," she continued, flipping another page. "I found records showing your dad used your name and personal information to open bank accounts you didn't know existed. All those accounts received your grandpa's money, but the funds were then transferred into risky investments." I felt like someone punched me in the gut. My own father had used my identity to carry out financial fraud. This wasn't just about money I never got. It was a crime that could land me in legal trouble too. "Ms. Rodriguez, does this mean I might be legally involved in something I didn't even know about?" She confirmed my worst fears. "Technically, yes. If the authorities discover those accounts without a proper inquiry, you could be seen as an accomplice. But here's the good news. We have enough proof to show you were a victim, not a participant." She showed me a stack of documents proving my precarious financial situation over the past years. No fraudster lives in a $300 a month apartment while supposedly handling thousands in bank accounts. I felt a momentary relief, followed quickly by rage. My dad's betrayal ran deeper than I ever imagined. When I left her office, my mind was reeling with information that felt straight out of a movie. My dad hadn't just stolen my grandfather's money. He'd built an elaborate financial fraud scheme using my identity as a cover. That explained the new house, the cars, the lifestyle that never added up with his salary. But it also meant others were involved, because you don't run that kind of operation alone. I began to wonder how many people at his company knew what was going on. That night, instead of heading to work, I called my supervisor at Kroger and said I was sick. I needed time to process everything and decide my next steps. I sat at my kitchen table, which doubled as my dining table and makeshift office, and started connecting the dots. I remembered times my dad casually mentioned investments and business opportunities over the years. I remembered how he always seemed nervous when talking about work. I remembered how Marjorie would change the subject whenever I asked about his promotion. Everything was starting to make sense in a disturbing way. At 2 a.m, I made a decision that would shift the course of this story. I grabbed my phone and called Grandpa. I knew he would be awake. Insomnia had been a problem for years. "Grandpa, I need to tell you something I discovered." I spent the next hour explaining everything. The fake accounts, the loans, the identity theft, the whole scheme. On the other end, silence. After I finished, he took a deep breath and said, "Kevin, my boy, this isn't just about you and your dad. This is federal crime." His voice trembled. "I'll call my lawyer in Chicago first thing tomorrow morning." What happened in the days that followed was like watching a giant domino chain collapse. Grandpa didn't just call his lawyer, he called the FBI. We discovered that my dad's company had been under federal investigation for months for money laundering and financial fraud. My case quickly became a key piece in the puzzle the agents were building. Suddenly, I wasn't just a guy who learned his father stole from him. I became a vital witness in a federal criminal investigation. Ms. Rodriguez connected me with a specialized financial crimes lawyer named Mr. Thompson, a man with decades of experience in cases like mine. "Kevin, you were lucky you found out when you did," he told me during our first meeting. "If you'd waited a few more months, you could have been dragged into something much worse." He explained how my dad and several colleagues were using family identities to create a complex network of fraudulent bank accounts. The money routed through those accounts wasn't just from caring grandparents. It was from multiple questionable sources. The real scale of the injustice I suffered became clear when Mr. Thompson showed me the full investigation records. My dad wasn't just a corrupt employee. He was a key operator in a scheme diverting hundreds of thousands of dollars. The new house, the cars, the high standard of living, it wasn't just funded by Grandpa's money, but by money from other victims too. I was just one piece on a much larger board, but an important enough piece to dismantle the whole operation. When I finally understood the scope of what had happened, I felt a strange mix of relief and horror. Relief, because everything finally made sense. Years of neglect, disregard, being treated like a burden. Horror, because my dad had used me as a shield for serious crimes since I was a minor. It wasn't just about money for college. It was about an entire family built on lies and crime, and I'd been the perfect cover. The poor, hard-working son nobody suspected. That night I finally slept, but I had a strange dream. I dreamt I was walking through a massive house searching for something I'd lost. Every door I opened revealed another room, another secret, another lie. When I woke up, I realized the dream was a metaphor for real life. I'd spent years searching for acceptance, love, a place in that home. What I really needed to find was the truth, and now that I had it, I had to decide what to do with it. Retribution was no longer a personal option. It was a need for justice far beyond our family drama. The plan kicked into gear on a cold January morning when Mr. Thompson called me with news I'd been waiting for weeks. "Kevin, we've got the green light. The FBI will execute the search and seizure warrants today at 6 a.m. My first reaction was a mix of relief and nerves. After years of being treated like I didn't matter, I was finally going to be heard, not just by my family, but by the justice system. Mr. Thompson explained that I'd need to be available for testimony and would likely be called to identify documents and clarify details about my financial situation. It was the first time in my life I felt truly important for something. At 6:15, my phone rang. It was Grandpa, calling from Chicago. "Kevin, I just saw on the local news. They're talking about an FBI operation in Nashville involving financial fraud." His voice sounded stronger, more determined. "I want you to know I'm proud of you, my boy. Doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always right." In that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. The feeling of being valued by someone from my own family. Grandpa had given me much more than money. He'd given me dignity. Around 8 that morning, I got a call I hadn't expected. It was Tyler, my half-brother, and he was clearly panicked. "Kevin, what did you do?" "The FBI is here at the house. They arrested Dad in handcuffs." His voice cracked, like a scared child. "Mom is crying. They're searching everything. They took computers, documents, everything." I took a deep breath before speaking. "Tyler, I didn't do anything except uncover the truth. Your father, our father, committed crimes using my name. I only cooperated with justice." Silence followed on the other end. "You don't get it, Kevin. We're going to lose everything." "No, Tyler," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You only lose the things bought with stolen money. That makes it different." I hung up the phone and realized that, for the first time, I had spoken to my half-brother as an equal, not someone looking for excuses or apologies. The feeling was strange, but liberating. I wasn't being cruel. I was being honest. And honesty, I learned, can be the most powerful form of justice. 2 hours later, Mr. Thompson called again. "Kevin, the operation was a complete success. Besides your father, they arrested 4 others from his company. They uncovered evidence showing the scheme involved more than $2 million. He paused. "There's more. They found documents indicating you weren't the only victim. Your father used at least 6 other family members' identities to create fake accounts." My chest tightened. How many others had been harmed by his greed? How many families had been destroyed by his manipulation? The following week, I went to federal court to testify. I'd never been in a courtroom before, and the environment was intimidating. High walls, suited people speaking legal jargon, a judge whose presence seemed to control destinies. When it was my turn, I looked directly at my father across the room. He looked smaller, more fragile, without that authoritative stance I remembered from childhood. Our eyes met for a moment, and I saw something I'd never seen before: genuine shame. I didn't feel satisfaction. It was simply a deep sadness for what our relationship could have been. My testimony lasted nearly 3 hours. I described my financial situation, years of struggle, how I discovered Grandpa's transfers. I talked about working night shifts, a rundown apartment, and the college dreams that seemed impossible. The federal prosecutor treated me with respect and patience, asking clear questions and giving me time to answer properly. For the first time, I felt like my story was being heard by people who truly cared about the truth. When I finished, the judge thanked me for my cooperation and said my testimony had been crucial to clarifying the facts. The outcomes came faster than I expected. My father pled guilty to multiple counts of financial fraud and embezzlement. He was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution to all victims. The new house was confiscated, the cars seized, and every bank account frozen. Marjorie and Tyler had to move into a small apartment across town. The luxurious life they'd built on lies and crime vanished overnight. But the most important part of the sentence for me was restitution. The judge ruled that I should receive not only the $30,000 Grandpa had sent over the years, but also interest and damages. The total approached $50,000. For the first time, I had enough financial resources to think about a different future. It wasn't just about the money, it was the chance to turn years of suffering into an opportunity for growth. When I left the courthouse that day, Grandpa was waiting for me outside. He'd flown in from Chicago just to be there for the sentencing. "Kevin," he said, giving me a big hug, "justice has been served, but now the most important thing is what you do with your life moving forward." We walked to his car together, and I realized that for the first time in years, I wasn't walking alone. I had someone from my real family by my side. What Grandpa wanted to leave me wasn't just finances. It was the lesson that dignity and integrity are worth more than any stolen money. The days after the sentencing were strange and quiet. My phone kept ringing, but I didn't pick up. It was numbers I recognized: Marjorie, Tyler, even some old neighbors who probably saw the news in local papers. I had changed my work number, but I kept my personal one for practical reasons. The difference was that now I had a choice. For the first time in my life, I could decide who deserved my attention and who didn't, and that feeling of control was almost intoxicating. 3 weeks after the sentencing, Marjorie finally tracked me down. She was waiting in the Kroger parking lot when I left work at 6 in the morning. She looked 10 years older in just a few months. Messy hair, clothes once expensive but now out of place, eyes red from crying. "Kevin, please, I need to talk to you," she said, approaching slowly like I was a wild animal that could bolt at any moment. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I stopped and looked at her. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with distant curiosity. "Marjorie, what do you want?" My voice came out colder than I expected. She swallowed hard and began speaking quickly as if she'd rehearsed her words 1,000 times. "Kevin, I know you have every right to hate us, but Tyler had nothing to do with this. He's just a kid." I raised my hand, cutting her off. "Tyler is 18, Marjorie. He's not a kid anymore. And neither are you innocent in this story." "I didn't know everything," she continued, tears starting to fall. "I thought the extra money was from promotions, bonuses. Orson told me he was investing well, that he had a knack for business." She paused, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "We lost the house, Kevin. We're now living in a 1-bedroom apartment. Tyler had to drop out of college because we couldn't pay." I listened in silence, waiting to feel something: pity, satisfaction, anything. But I only felt a strange emptiness, as if she was speaking about people I didn't know. "Marjorie," I finally said, "you only lost things bought with stolen money, things that were never really yours." She opened her mouth to protest, but I continued. "I spent years working night shifts, eating instant noodles, wearing second-hand clothes, not because I had to, but because you stole my chance to live differently." My voice remained calm, but my words came out with a clarity that surprised me. "You're not being punished unfairly. You're finally living the reality I lived all along." She tried one more time. "Kevin, I know we messed up, but we can't rewrite the past. Tyler is hurting. He doesn't understand why his brother won't help." That word, brother, hit me harder than I expected. "Brother?" I repeated slowly. Marjorie, a brother doesn't stay silent while the other is treated like a stranger in their own home. A brother doesn't accept privileges while the other struggles to survive. I grabbed my keys from my pocket. Tyler was never my brother. He was just the favored son you raised at my expense. As I started walking away, she shouted, "Kevin, please, we are family." I stopped, turned around slowly, and looked her in the eyes. "No, Marjorie. Family is who cares for you when you have nothing left to offer. Family stands by you when you need it, not people who steal from you when you don't even know it's happening." I paused, letting my words sink in. You were just people who lived in the same house as me for some years. My real family is Grandpa, who cared about me when he didn't even know I was suffering. 2 weeks later, I received a handwritten letter from Tyler. He wrote 3 pages trying to explain how he knew nothing, how he'd always admired me, how he wanted a real brotherly relationship. The letter ended with a direct request. He wanted me to help him get a job, to give me a chance to prove he was different from our parents. I read the letter twice, folded it carefully, and put it in a drawer. 3 days later, I wrote a 2-line response. "Tyler, I sincerely hope you find your way in life, but that path doesn't go through me." I never answered calls, messages, or letters again. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but from a deep understanding that some bridges should never be rebuilt. Some relationships are like houses built on rotten foundations. Even if you try to renovate, the structure will never be solid. I had spent years trying to earn the love and respect of people who never truly saw me as family. Now, I finally understood that I didn't need to try. The only person who needed to accept me was myself. When I look back, I don't feel satisfaction at their downfall, but I don't feel pity either. I feel only a strange peace, as if I've finally closed a chapter that should have ended long ago. Sometimes the greatest justice isn't punishing the guilty, it's freeing the victims. And I, finally, was free. 2 years have passed since that day in court, and my life has changed in ways I never imagined possible. I'm now in my final semester of civil engineering at Middle Tennessee State University, paid for with the restitution money and a merit scholarship I've maintained with high grades. I live in a small, clean, and organized apartment 15 minutes from campus. It's not luxurious, but it's mine, bought with honest money, earned through hard work. Sometimes when I wake up and see my engineering books on the table, I still can't believe I made it this far. Grandpa came to visit last month for my graduation. He's 83 now, moves a bit slower, but his eyes still shine with that same wisdom that's always impressed me. "Kevin," he said, sitting in my little living room, "you know I'm proud of you, right?" I did, but it was still good to hear. Not just for your grades or the degree. I'm proud of the man you've become. In that moment, I realized the legacy he wanted to leave me wasn't money or material things. It was the understanding that dignity and integrity are the only things that truly belong to you. I work part-time at an engineering firm here in Nashville, doing a paid internship. My boss, Mr. Anderson, is a fair man who values competence and dedication. For the first time in my life, I feel recognized for my merit, not because of connections or favors. My coworkers treat me as an equal, and that still feels a little strange, but in a good way. Sometimes I catch myself wondering how different things might have been if I'd had this opportunity at 18. But I quickly let that thought go. The past can't be changed, but the future is still being written. Last week I got a letter I wasn't expecting. It was from an organization that supports young people facing family hardship, asking me to join a mentorship program. Someone, though they didn't say who, had nominated me as someone who could inspire others going through similar experiences. I read the letter 3 times before deciding, not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but because I understood that maybe my story could help someone going through what I went through. Sometimes the greatest redemption doesn't come from forgetting pain, but from turning it into something that helps others. Today, when the silence in my apartment feels heavy, it's not the desperate loneliness I used to know. It's a different silence, one of peace, of possibility, of a future I'm building on my own. I keep a photo of Grandpa on my desk, and sometimes I talk to it when I need to make big decisions. I don't get any answers, of course, but I know he'd be proud of the choices I've made. Some scars never completely fade, but they can become reminders that you're stronger than you ever thought. And I finally discovered who I really am when I stopped trying to be seen by people who never truly looked at me. And now, I'm speaking directly to you. Yes, you, the one who stuck with me through this journey. Have you been through something similar? Have you ever found out that your own family was betraying you or lived through some kind of injustice at home? Share your experience in the comments. I want to know how you dealt with being overlooked or mistreated by the people closest to you. If this story touched you in any way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Every week I share real stories of people who turned family betrayal into opportunities for growth through justice. Just like I learned that some scars can become reminders of our strength, you too can discover who you really are, once you stop trying to be accepted by people who never truly saw you in the first place.